On a quiet Monday morning, Ethan Carter stood in front of a mirror, looking at a man almost nobody would recognize. The expensive tailored suits were gone, replaced by a simple blue work shirt, faded black pants, and inexpensive shoes that showed signs of wear. His neatly styled hair had been trimmed differently. A pair of plain glasses rested on his face, and a small amount of makeup subtly changed his appearance. Instead of carrying a luxury briefcase, he held a worn backpack filled with ordinary office supplies. For the next 2 weeks, he would no longer be the celebrated CEO of one of the country's fastest-growing technology companies. He would become Daniel Brooks, a temporary contract employee assigned wherever extra help was needed. Only 3 trusted executives and his personal assistant knew about the plan. Everyone else, from senior managers to interns, believed Daniel was simply another new worker trying to earn a paycheck. Ethan had not organized this experiment to embarrass anyone or secretly search for reasons to fire employees. He wanted to answer a question that had been troubling him for months. Were people genuinely respectful, honest, and supportive when they believed nobody important was watching? Or did they only behave professionally around executives? Annual reports and employee surveys painted a nearly perfect picture of the company's culture, but Ethan understood that paperwork often reflected what people wanted leaders to see rather than what happened every day. He believed real character appeared in ordinary moments, during casual conversations, unexpected problems, and simple interactions with people who held no influence. As he walked toward the company's headquarters, employees hurried past without giving him a second glance. Some were focused on their phones. Others rushed inside, carrying coffee cups and laptop bags, while a few looked exhausted before the workday had even begun. Standing among them felt strangely unfamiliar. For the first time in years, Ethan experienced what it was like to enter his own building without special treatment, reserved parking, or welcoming smiles. He quietly stepped through the front entrance, took a deep breath, introduced himself as Daniel Brooks to the receptionist, and waited to discover what his own company was truly like, from the perspective of someone everyone believed was completely ordinary. Over the next several days, Ethan moved from one department to another, taking on simple assignments that allowed him to observe how employees interacted during an ordinary work week. As Daniel Brooks, he answered customer emails, organized supply rooms, carried equipment between offices, and helped wherever extra assistance was needed. Most people assumed he was just another temporary worker who would disappear after a short contract, so they spoke and behaved naturally around him. What Ethan witnessed was very different from the polished image presented in executive meetings. In one department, a supervisor criticized a young employee in front of the entire team for making a small typing mistake, leaving the employee embarrassed and afraid to ask questions. In another office, experienced workers refused to explain basic procedures to a new hire, telling him to figure it out instead of offering guidance. Ethan also noticed that certain employees received better treatment simply because they had close relationships with their managers, while others who worked just as hard were ignored whenever praise or opportunities were handed out. During lunch breaks, small groups formed around popularity rather than teamwork, and quieter employees often ate alone without anyone inviting them to join the conversation. He watched maintenance staff clean hallways, while several workers walked past without a greeting or even a simple thank you. Customer service representatives were expected to remain calm with difficult clients, yet some managers spoke to their own teams with far less patience than customers ever showed. Ethan paid close attention to these ordinary moments because they revealed habits that never appeared in performance reports. He filled a small notebook with observations, writing down situations instead of names, determined to understand the patterns rather than blame individuals. Occasionally, he asked simple questions as Daniel, pretending he was still learning the company culture, and the answers surprised him. Some employees openly admitted they avoided sharing ideas because they feared being criticized. Others believed promotions depended more on visibility than effort. Several talented workers quietly accepted unfair treatment because they assumed speaking up would damage their careers. With every conversation and every passing hour, Ethan realized the greatest challenges facing his company were not found in financial statements or quarterly reports, but in the everyday behavior that slowly shaped trust, confidence, and morale across the entire organization. Just when Ethan began wondering whether genuine kindness had become rare inside his company, he met an employee named Sarah Mitchell from the customer support department. She held no management position, had no private office, and was not one of the people whose achievements were regularly celebrated in company meetings. To everyone else, she appeared to be an ordinary employee doing an ordinary job. Yet from the moment she met Daniel Brooks, she treated him with a level of respect that immediately caught Ethan's attention. On his first assignment near her department, she noticed him looking confused while trying to locate a storage room. Instead of pointing in the general direction and returning to her desk, she paused her work, walked with him through the hallway, and explained how the building was organized so he would not get lost again. Later that morning, she introduced him to several co-workers, making sure he did not feel like an outsider. During lunch, when she saw Daniel sitting alone, she invited him to join her table without hesitation. Their conversation was relaxed and genuine, and she asked about his previous jobs, his goals, and how he was adjusting to the company. She listened carefully instead of interrupting, offering practical advice about daily routines and encouraging him to ask questions whenever he needed help. Over the following days, Ethan noticed that Sarah treated everyone with the same patience, whether they were senior managers, interns, security guards, or cleaning staff. She greeted people by name, thanked them for even small acts of assistance, and remained calm when co-workers became frustrated under pressure. When another employee complained that helping temporary workers was a waste of time, Sarah politely disagreed, explaining that everyone deserved the chance to succeed because every experienced employee had once been new. She never tried to impress anyone or seek recognition for her actions. In fact, many of her thoughtful gestures happened when nobody else seemed to notice. Ethan deliberately made a few small mistakes while learning unfamiliar tasks, expecting frustration or criticism. But Sarah simply explained the correct process with patience and encouraged him to keep trying. As the days passed, Ethan realized her kindness was not an occasional act or part of a performance. It reflected her character, her values, and the quiet leadership she demonstrated every single day through consistent respect, honesty, and genuine concern for the people around her. After 2 weeks of quietly observing the company from the perspective of an ordinary employee, Ethan decided it was time to bring the experiment to an end. A company-wide meeting was scheduled for Friday afternoon, and every department was instructed to gather in the main conference hall. Employees assumed the meeting would focus on quarterly performance, upcoming projects, or new business announcements. Daniel Brooks quietly entered the room with the rest of the staff and took a seat near the back, drawing little attention from those around him. Conversations filled the hall as people chatted with co-workers, completely unaware that the temporary employee sitting among them was about to change the atmosphere forever. A few minutes later, one of the senior executives walked onto the stage and welcomed everyone before introducing the company's CEO. As the lights shifted toward the front, Ethan calmly stood up from his chair in the back of the room and began walking down the center aisle. At first, people looked confused, wondering why Daniel was approaching the stage. The whispers quickly grew louder as he removed his plain glasses and handed his employee badge to the executive waiting near the podium. When Ethan Carter stepped onto the stage, the room fell completely silent. Faces filled with shock, disbelief, and embarrassment stared back at him as employees slowly realized they had spent the past 2 weeks working beside the CEO without recognizing him. Ethan thanked everyone for attending and explained why he had chosen to disguise himself. He spoke honestly about his desire to understand the company's true culture instead of relying only on reports and presentations. Without mentioning unnecessary personal details, he described situations he had witnessed throughout different departments, including moments of disrespect, favoritism, poor communication, and missed opportunities to support one another. He emphasized that financial success meant very little if employees did not feel valued or respected every day. Then Ethan shifted the focus to the positive examples he had experienced. He spoke about an employee who consistently offered help without expecting recognition, welcomed newcomers with kindness, treated every person equally regardless of their position, and demonstrated the values the company claimed to represent. When he called Sarah Mitchell to the stage, the audience turned toward her in surprise as she slowly walked forward. Unaware that her ordinary acts of compassion had become the most important lesson the entire company would remember from the experiment. As Sarah stood beside Ethan on the stage, the room remained silent. She looked confused and slightly overwhelmed, unsure why the CEO had singled her out in front of hundreds of co-workers. Ethan smiled and explained that throughout the 2-week experiment, he had carefully observed how employees treated one another when they believed no executives were watching. While many people performed their assigned tasks well, very few consistently demonstrated genuine kindness, patience, and respect in everyday situations. He shared several examples of Sarah's actions without exaggeration, describing how she welcomed a new employee, offered guidance without being asked, encouraged others instead of criticizing them, and treated every person with the same level of dignity, regardless of their job title. Ethan emphasized that she had never acted differently because she expected a reward or recognition. She believed helping others was simply the right thing to do, and that attitude had made a greater impression on him than any performance report or sales target. The audience listened quietly as many employees reflected on their own behavior during the previous weeks. Ethan then announced that Sarah would be promoted to a newly created leadership position focused on employee development and workplace culture. He explained that leadership was not defined only by authority or years of experience, but by the ability to inspire trust, encourage teamwork, and bring out the best in others. The announcement was met with genuine applause, and several co-workers who had worked closely with Sarah smiled proudly because they knew she had earned the opportunity through years of consistent character rather than a single moment. Ethan also revealed a series of company-wide changes designed to strengthen the culture from the inside out. Managers would receive additional leadership training. Anonymous employee feedback would be reviewed more carefully, and mentorship programs would be introduced so that every new employee would have someone to guide and support them during their first weeks. Recognition programs would focus not only on productivity, but also on cooperation, integrity, and respect. Ethan reminded everyone that every conversation, every decision, and every small act of kindness contributed to the reputation of the company far more than impressive marketing campaigns ever could. As employees left the conference hall that afternoon, many greeted co-workers they had previously overlooked, thanked members of the maintenance and security teams, and began looking at the workplace through a different lens, understanding that the strongest companies are built not only by talented people, but by people who choose to treat others with dignity every single day.